And where you are is where you're going to be. You are in your foxhole, folks. You're probably not going to be escaping the city if you don't have the means. You're done. You're there. That's your foxhole. You need to start learning how to grow your own food in ways that don't require you to go get a big chunk of land.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. Jeff Raymond, Eden Grove. Now, remember, we are we got one of the towers here and going to be trying to stream that 24 hours a day, watching that process on how things are growing in a controlled environment indoor. But what's the reason you would do that? It's all great to do it, but why? You could still maybe get some food from the supermarket if it's available. Yeah, how's it grown? Is it gene edited? Is it natural foods? Is it coated with appeal you can't wash that off? I mean, what's with our food supply anymore? Farmers are demonized. Everywhere you look, cattle are bad. Now it's nitrogen bad, everything bad. It was CO2, now it's nitrogen. What's it going to be next? Oh, wait, it'll be ozone as the ozone depletion event starts rolling in heavy here in July. So where does it really end? It doesn't. That's the whole point. It never ends. You have to understand it never, ever ends. They've gotten this much power, taken this much sovereignty during the last 3 years. It's not ending. So it's now this ever ridiculous push. And I'm going to ask a serious question. At what point do people actually wake up and go, now you're reducing the food supply on purpose, saying that nitrogen's bad? Okay, you're removing the entire food supply from the planet. At what point do people go, wait, you mean they're removing the entire food supply from the planet so you can only buy things made in a factory and patented from a company, and that's it? You can't get anything natural anymore? At what point do people actually wake up and go, whoa, that is so far, it's over the range, way over the range. But I'm really baffled that people haven't put two and two together after the Dutch farmers. And now it's here on our shores. That closure of farms and confiscation of farmlands here. So, Jeff, I appreciate you joining.
Thanks for having me.
For the show. 85% of the population maybe is supposedly supposed to be in cities by 2050, 15-minute cities, which I lived in I'm going to call it a 25-minute city when I was in Taipei. It was an area out near the airport called Taoyuan, and everywhere is immaculate, brand new, but you knew when you ended at the end of the zone there. And you could go ride a bike around 20, 25 minutes around to each corner, each edge. But once you got out of that, you were trapped by highways on one side. You were trapped by factories completely surrounded by millions of dogs going downhill on another. Then when I say downhill, you're talking about a 10 minutes straight downhill. Coming back up would take an hour. Like you were hemmed in on many sides. Like you knew you were at the end of the zone. You either got on the MRT and popped out of there, you drove out of there. There was no getting out otherwise. And the whole barcode for life, they're trying to barcode and patent every single life form on planet. I think we have 10 million species that have been barcoded that are now under the patent process, where you'll need a usage fee for your own hickory tree on your own land because they've barcoded it and this sort of thing. So it's a weird world we're moving into, and I could see why we need to grow our own food. So I'm done rambling. It's your time. I let it go. Whoosh.
Yeah, no, every time you and I get together, these conversations can go a long time. So there's a lot to cover. But when it comes to food, what's more important than that? There are some basic things: Maslow's hierarchy, food, water, shelter. Getting those things taken care of. It's something that for the life of humanity we've always focused on. But now in today's world, I think one of the things that's happened is there's been this it'd be like a cloak of comfort, I guess, that has gone over people's eyes, or a cloak of availability, ease. Is what we're seeing is people, I've in my journeys from the real Martian now to Eden, and going to universities and schools and talking to people and hearing people online as well, is beyond a shadow of doubt, we can say that a majority of the population, especially the younger population, is completely and utterly disconnected from what food really is. They see food as a thing that you do during the day, because it keeps your body going, and you can go anywhere and get it. It's super easy. It's something that like, hey, where am I going to go to eat tonight? It's not, how am I going to get food to eat? Now, there is a large chunk of the population that's not in America or in primary European countries that they are truly worried about where they're getting food. And they get it. They understand the value and importance of having their own food. But for a large chunk of the world's population, especially these ones going into the cities, right? That was a UN report from a few years ago. And you were reporting on it, others were reporting on it. It's just a UN report. You can go get it. And it says by the year 2050, 85% of the population will be in cities because it's so convenient.
Video.
Well, unfortunately, when you're in the city, how do you grow food? What are you going to do? You can have little pot planters. If you're in an apartment, maybe you can have a victory garden. And at Eden, we suggest everybody do that. Our whole company exists because we saw a while ago that it's a numbers game. We didn't even know about an actual attack on the food supply chain. We were just looking at it from purely people and population growth. There is clearly a anti-human movement that's going on right now that is trying to get all of us off the planet. And a way that is doing that, one way that is doing that is by attacking our food. And like you said, John Kerry here now taking that message broadly, the Dutch farmers, New Zealand, Australia, we're seeing these things pop up more and more. And it's the slow burn, right? It's suppressed by the media. You don't really hear about it, but it is happening. It's coming. And unfortunately, it's being done in such a nefarious way that hardly any of us can do anything about it because it's so slow. But it is happening. So at Eden, we're trying to, find a way to get people a tool that they can use to grow their own food or at least offset their food production so they have some control over it. So essentially, David, we've created a fishing pole. We're working on making that fishing pole better. That's why we sent it to people like yourself to get feedback on. And we want to teach people how to fish with that fishing pole. So that's where we're coming from. And I'm just really happy that you had us on, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, that cloak of comfort that you talk about, you have to realize that humanity over the last, say, 10,000 years, we haven't had it this good and this easy on the planet. So when humans find comfort, that is the default that has allowed us to move through the last 400,000 years here of being a Homo sapien, surviving ice ages. The animals were so much larger during the last ice age coming out into the Pleistocene here. To be able to have comfort and raise a family without the immense amounts of danger and unknowns and cataclysms and, tribal warfare and these different types of things that don't often happen today. We're in such a Goldilocks zone of human comfort that's being used against us. Because the complacency, that's a default for humanity for survival. When you find that niche of a comfort zone where you're not being, eaten by saber-toothed tigers and there's not avalanches sliding down, there's floods aren't coming in, and that you want to stay there and you want to stay in that exact space because it's completely safe. And that's what, humanity's craved for, nearly 500,000 years now. We just haven't had that. So just the nefariousness is that's being used now against us, that comfort zone, that's a default button that's placed in humanity for survival.
Yeah, you're totally right. I 100% agree with you. Is once you get used to something, even if it's actually really weird. The comfort thing. As humans, we have this amazing ability to adapt to adapt 2030. I'm here every day, folks. So you know, we do have this. In all seriousness, we have this amazing ability to adapt to situations that we would normally consider to be completely unacceptable. You could take a human being who was over in the penthouse in New York and drop them into the fields in Africa, and they will start adapting. It is, even though it's so completely beyond anything they've known. We have that amazing way to adapt. But as you said, as soon as we find a place that we've adapted to, that we're like, this is a place that I can understand, that I want to be in, even if it's difficult, even if it's maybe evil in some senses, I still know it, and I'm going to go with what I know. And what people like yourself and what we're trying to do at Eden is start identifying with people who understand that comfort zone that you're used to, it's changing. Now, the way they're changing it, the Overton window, it's just a slow shift, so you don't really feel like this is happening, but this is what's going on. Is while they're, watch my left hand, while the right hand is now changing, that problem is going to start hitting your food supply. You're going to see the quality of food in your supermarket is going to drop. You're going to see, when you go in there and you're messing with the produce, you're going to see there'll still be a lot there, especially in America. There's still a lot. And I get this a lot is, we're not really seeing this in America. This is all just fear mongering. It's not fear mongering. It's just America has been amazingly blessed with so much abundance that we export so much food to the rest of the planet, and we still have food. But the problem is that those days are changing, and it is doing the slow thing. But if you pay attention to it from what it used to be to what it is, you'll notice not only is the quality changing, but the quantity of fresh vegetables and fruits and everything is starting to change. And then you're also seeing cost. You're seeing those costs not just because of inflation, but because of availability. We're seeing here as something that you've spoken about with the mini ice age conversations is the changing climate. And I want to step it back and say, whether you're in the camp of mini ice age or you're like the world's going to burn, it really doesn't matter when it comes to food. Both of them are bad. One of them is worse than the other, but both are bad and have an impact on society. And again, so you can remove politics, because the whole climate change thing, if you ask me, is a very political conversation. But if we just look at what is happening, like here, I'm in Washington State, and I live up in the mountains. And right now, on the eastern side of the mountains, it should be in the 70s and 80s each day. Well, we're having a few 70 and 80-degree days, but they're kind of slowly getting to where it should be in summer. But what the weather forecast is having, we're having this huge windstorm because a new front is blowing in, and we're actually going to be down in the low 40s, and even some forecasts have this in the 30s. Now, we live in an area that produces a tremendous amount of fruit, not just for Washington State, but for America and for export as well. The challenge with fruit farmers is, if they get a cold day, it essentially stops the growth on the fruit. And so they could have fruit loss, meaning it just falls off. The tree is like, whoa, it's winter now. Guess what? Time to shed all this fruit because I got to start going dormant, which is the major fear. Or it just slows the growth down to where instead of having, an apple that's this big, it's even smaller. So their yield goes down. We're seeing in the Midwest, you reported on it as well, the corn losses that are happening. We're seeing up north, I have people up in North Dakota that do farming, and there's the mud and the spring and everything. It's been year to year to year. They can't get in the field on time to get their crops. So they're shifting away from other crops. I think they're going into soy mostly, which, that's nice, but these are big scale farm problems, but the individual farmers or people consuming, they're going to start to feel that pain. And because that window is shifting so slowly, you're not going to really realize it unless you step back, take a deep breath, do whatever you do to calm down, whether it be prayer, smoke something, drink something, and just let your mind open to the reality that this window thing is happening to you. And you need to be ready for what happens when it goes off screen, because they are putting you into a cage. They're putting all of us. It's not like if you move out into the woods and live in the mountains and you're all by yourself, that you've made it through. No, you're going to die. It's just going to, you might have a better life and all that, but you by yourself, you will die. Some of you are going to be like, I can live forever. Yes, you'll be extremely lonely. You'll have emotional, psychological issues. So we still need community. So the idea that I can run out and hide is fake. And anyone who believes that still, you're not woke up to the reality. So we do have to be in community. We do have to have people together. And then I've heard this one too, is like, if they haven't got out of the cities yet, whatever, it's up to them. I'm like, no, that is anti-human as well. That is not showing your brother love. There's people in the cities who we need to help. We need to take the things that we learn in rural America about farming and growing food, and we need to get a way to get it into the city, even when maybe we're not allowed to move. So back again, that's where we started Eden, and we're hoping that our systems, like what you're reviewing for us and giving us feedback on, are going to help people in this area.
Yeah, I could respond to that. So I just saw some new numbers just yesterday. The U.S. Wheat Associates, they put out weekly forecasts. They're predicting wheat to go to the lowest since 1957. Now that's on top of the corn losses. So American wheat is going to go the lowest since 57. I can attest here, it was in the low 50s out in East Tennessee, and that is unheard of. You should have heard how old timers were talking. It was really rare how cold it's been, and it's only barely touching the 60s in the evenings here. It should be in the 70s in the evening. It's a good 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit off the temperatures. And even as we roll into July, the longer term forecast still shows us, at the 60s or 50s in the evenings. And that just is insane how out of kilter it is, unless you understand a couple larger mechanisms at work. The Hunga Tonga eruption, which I've talked about until I'm blue in the face, the ozone depletion and the disruptions in the atmosphere in both hemispheres. Then the Shiva-Lucy eruption about a month and a half ago that sent a huge amount of sulfur dioxide up. But now, even if you are remote, you run that fire risk, because if you're that remote, you're going to be out in a forest somewhere. And we just saw what happened with your better version, because you had the whole Canadian western side of Canada go off in the BC area all the way down to the American border there. That whole place went off. And then the center of Canada and Alberta and Saskatchewan flared off, Quebec. And then these fires we just saw along from Quebec, Ontario, and over into the Maritimes. That was an extremely remote land. So whoever was out there that had their preps ready and they were, living out in the forest, they got smoked out, literally smoked out. And remember, George Bush said, smoke them out. We're going to smoke them out. Everybody got to smoke them out. But I was looking at these incredible videos just today from New York. The rain has come now, and there's white fuzzy bubbles all over the streets. So whatever was in the air, that orange haze, probably wasn't wildfire smoke, or it was some mix of chemicals with wildfire smoke. But whatever's happening now, the rain is coming down and pulling that detritus out of the air, and it's creating this milky white, like translucent, bubbly liquid everywhere as far as you can look. It's on the trees, it's on the grass, it's on more, concentrated on the streets where it's running down in the gutters there. But the entire landscape right now is being transformed into a tiny white bubble landscape. And it's kind of scary to think what's in that's now going to be on the crops. You could predict a huge amount of crop losses from whatever's coming out of the air on that, because plants grow in a certain pH, and you like to talk about nutrient mix in there, because when you send me that, you already had the different bags of the phosphorus, nitrogen, etc., to put in to get that into what you need for the nutrients to grow plants in an enclosed system there. But plants at this time, they're still in their infancy stage. They're not even knee high yet. The corn out here is just barely knee high, and they're incredibly vulnerable when they're at that smaller age. Before you hit something in August, it'll survive. It's already gotten pretty deep into the soil with the roots and whatever. But this whole strange white bubble phenomenon, runoff thing that's happening all over Northeast, Maritimes, New England areas.
Ohio, the train derailment and the big ginormous mushroom cloud of hugely toxic, let's touch it off because that's a great idea plan. And it's in the soil. Like, where'd that go in the media? How come that's not reported on? You got Flint, Michigan with bad water still. And now you've got most of the Northeast being covered in a layer of toxic chemicals, soot. And that's, of course, in the atmosphere as well. And this is where I come back to the anti-human. It seems so ridiculous what's happening and the frequency of events that are occurring right now. that I have no other word to put to or words to put to it other than anti-human. Like there are some seriously stupid things that are happening right now that are literally just going after things that we depend on. And most of us don't have time to step back and think. That's why channels like yours are important, because you're able to be supported by your YouTubers. So hey, everybody, like, subscribe, and thumbs up. Help the algorithm with Adapt 2030. It's because of work like you that you do that people are able to be informed, because they don't have time, because they're out there taking care of their kids. They're getting them out there to the sports, that comfort level, and those are good things. And who doesn't want to help their kids go to do that, or get to school, or do their events, or you're single, you're dating, you've got a job, you're doing all this. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that keep people busy, which is part of the problem. Is we've become so busy in our lives that we no longer have time to actually see what's happening. Why? Because I got to get the kids to school. I don't have time for that right now. I mean, just think about it when you're scrolling. How much time, when's the last time you've actually read a full article, right? David, you do it because you're doing the research and
I
everything.
do, yeah.
But
Lots of them.
yeah, the most of us, though, myself included, like, it's headlines, baby, and then maybe I'll click on it. If they don't get my attention in the first, paragraph, then I'm out. And that's unfortunately the way of the world. Is you do have a lot going on. So what we try to do as informed individuals is get as much input as I can within the time I have. And the system that we're fighting, I'll call it what it is, the beast system, it knows this. It knows that if it keeps you occupied, if it keeps you upset, if it keeps your emotions high and your logic low, you are easily distracted and you can't see what's going on. So when you do step back and you do see everything that's happening, you're like, our food, they're going after the food, man. Like, what in the world? Why are we allowing this to happen? And it's because we're all comfortable. We don't want to lose that comfort. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to. And I'm here. I'm throw myself under the bus. Is like, last thing I want to do is go out and create a huge wave where I lose everything I have. I mean, that's a fear, and we all have it. But we do need to start thinking seriously and getting ready in a way that is actually going to work in the long run. And one of the things, I'll pause on this here, David, is one of the things that I've seen and heard a lot of is, just garden, just garden, just garden, just grow your own food. Okay, I've gone through that adventure. My wife has taken that over and is now propagating that forward for us. But anybody who has grown their own food will tell you how hard it is to grow your own food consistently and with a yield that you can actually depend on. The squirrels, the rodents. We just planted a bunch of starts in the ground, even though we have towers that can grow stuff above ground. And guess what? The rodents came, even though we have fence everywhere. So guess what? I got to go spend more money on fencing. I got to take more time. Time is money, and go out there and stop the rodents. I think you have snakes over there. They're eating rats and everything. And people in the city that have victory gardens, they have rats. I got that. I was like, man, that would freak me out. But the snake one would really freak me out with the size of snakes that you have, because I'm like Indiana Jones, man. Why did it have to be snakes? And but the whole idea with gardening, that is going to be your savior. I absolutely agree. You should learn how to grow your own food. But honestly, I think the time for that is starting. Like, it's almost too late. And where you are is where you're going to be. You are in your foxhole, folks. You're probably not going to be escaping the city if you don't have the means. You're done. You're there. That's your foxhole. You need to start learning how to grow your own food in ways that don't require you to go get a big chunk of land.
Well, not only that, but we have sheep now, and we have geese and turkeys. So we're trying to integrate the same pen areas where we do some rotation, where there's different areas that we let them into. They can't get into the next section. Then they trim that out, and then we close that one off so they can only go into section number 3. But we're trying to integrate it with geese, with the sheep, because those are a good mix. The turkeys are with the guinea fowl, because that's a good mix. But we're finding the snakes are now, because there was such a drought. Now, it really rained a lot the last few days, so hopefully that will stop the snakes. But before, they were seeking water sources because they were looking for food and water, because it was bone dry. There were fire ban burns and all this kind of. You couldn't start a fire anywhere. If you did, they would definitely come running with the fire trucks, and you'd be getting a big fine. But we found that egg production would go down when the snakes were around, because they would get in there and they wouldn't eat the birds because the birds are too big. I mean, king snake and black snakes is what we have here, and they're both a good 5 foot long. King snake's a little longer, probably 6 foot. But I grew up around snakes a lot because we lived along a forest edge, and they always were in the backyard, and I never was really afraid of snakes very much. So I picked them up and I took them up higher in the forest and let them go. But if they were hungry, they probably would have found their way right back. So we're getting a ratio of like snake presence versus egg loss. But recently we're back up to the number of eggs we had, and getting minnow traps out to try to put an egg in the back of a minnow trap and get a snake to get in there, and then it gets caught, can't get back out. But I mean, those are minor fixes. I mean, are you catching 2 snakes or something? There's probably 50 here. The same thing with rodents. I mean, how many of those little small safe traps can you do? By the way, FYI, I've heard a lot of people talk about hunting, setting little snares and stuff, and I've practiced that too. Never caught anything. But if your life depended on having a meat source, you're going to want to go with those safe traps, because you can get something in there 100% of the time, every single night. Little piece of bait in there, they walk in. Could be anything from foxes to what do you got? Weasels here, possums, raccoons, anything like that will get in there. Squirrels get trapped in those things all the time. But whatever it is, if you need a meat source, set those small traps out. But to actually have your animals and get the food, and then, feed's expensive now. So we cut fodder out of the back. We let part of our backfield go. By the time you go back there and you cut it and bring it back, and you have to cut it up small because sheep can't eat a huge amount of thing. You need to cut up in smaller chunks so they can get it. So you're spending time continuously. So now we're trying to use the riding mower to go into certain areas to bag that because the blades will cut it up and then give it to them. So we're wondering, is there really much, oil or gas on the things that were cut out of the field by the time it makes it into the bin in the back? Not much. We've run through it a bunch, but growing food and raising animals takes a lot of time. I'm the same way. How many hours would you spend per day, do you think? 3, 4? Every single day dedicated. You can't miss a day. It's not like you can just go walk off for a weekend holiday and come back and you think your animals will be alive or your garden's going to be intact. It's just not like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've decided, to go. Some people say like you got to start small and you got to work your way into the bigger animals and stuff for animal husbandry. But I just went straight for cows, Black Angus, and I'm really glad I did, because fence is my big problem with them. Taking care of the fence, mending the fence, and then finally getting the fence dialed in, which woven field fence with barbed wire strand across the top is by far the best thing that you could ever possibly do for your property. Do not get high tension stainless steel. If you're a horse person, it's a waste of your life. It's going to be painful. It's really expensive, and you should just go woven right off the bat.
4x4 woven wire fence. You can bend that because you can bend that when you're going down hills a little bit too, to get it even on your your post.
It's just so much better, and utility is there. So that's just a life lesson from the guys who have been there and done it. And coming into it and not knowing the right type of fence. Like most people say, oh, 4 strands of barbed wire, 5 strands of barbed wire. I'm like, that won't help with goats, and it will not stop them, or pigs, or chickens. But if you put some woven field fence down, man, that stuff is just such utilitarian kind of. Anyway, that's separate.
Can I jump in for just a second on that? Because if there's a 2x2 and they coat it with it's a coated fence, so they coat it with green, and that stuff is so difficult to put up unless you're on a completely flat plane. You bend that down an inch and the whole thing kinks backward. So like the amount of problems we had with that green galvanized coated wire, forget it. You're just going to go something that you can actually bend. It's got to have that wool. How many mistakes and how much money we've wasted just on fencing alone. Oh my gosh, we got rolls of stuff we didn't use. We used a little square of it to like put on the front of a gate or something because you can pull it tight. Otherwise, I wish I could get a refund for everything I've wasted money on. I have thousands and thousands of dollars laying around of junk we can't use.
Well, and it's really interesting you say that, like the lessons learned. A lot of your viewers are probably sitting there going, "Man, I know this stuff. I grew up with all these things." Yeah, exactly. You did. You grew up in the farming, the ranching environment. There are those of us that were familiar with it. Maybe we had some experience being touched to it, friends, family members, whatever, but we didn't grow up with it. And now what we're seeing is that a lot of us are waking up like, "Hey, man, we should be doing this," and then we're having to relearn things because in our lives, and this is actually a broader concept, is have you ever noticed how the old people that have all the lessons learned, how they're kind of a lot less of them than there used to be? Stories about how you took care of your food back in the Great Depression, they're out there, but the people that could tell those stories aren't really here anymore. How about World War II and the people who are actually there going through that? They're all kind of gone now. The people who we respect, when I say old, I mean the ones who have learned knowledge, who went through all the stuff that David and I are talking about. And we're sitting there going like, where are they? Who do you turn to? Where are your mentors? they're starting to disappear. And what you're getting is a huge knowledge gap of this. These are things we used to all just do as a matter of course. You didn't wake up in the morning, play on your phone, get on the bus or the metro or the Uber, go to school. No, you woke up in the morning at like 4 o'clock. You went out, you mucked the stalls, you cleaned the garden, you milked the cow, you brought that in. Somebody else took that over. Your mom was probably there doing all that work, prepping the food, getting stuff going, making lunches, doing all that stuff. And the husband, the dad is out there building fence, tending fence, doing all those things, going to a job, paying the bills. That's what it used to be. Now it's, what my biggest concern today is my iPhone charged? Who's going to thumbs up me on social media today? And what do I do about the people who are going to, thumb me down, dislike me, whatever? And there are serious problems with that on the emotional front. So I don't want to minimize it, but like our world has become so comfortable that we have lost track of what it takes to actually grow food. So to all the farmers out there and to the ranchers who've been doing this, we thank you. We thank you for everything that you do and all the crap literally that you deal with every day so that we could have food and not even think about it. But we are thinking about you now. And a minimum that comes out of this video, hopefully there's some people that start sitting there and they'll go thank a farmer. Instead of going to Safeway, go to your local farmer's market, buy food there, support them. It's going to cost more. You know why it's going to cost more is because they're not a big, ginormous farm that's using herbicides and pesticides to, poison the soil and, rape the land, essentially. I know that sounds kind of environmentalist, but it's actually the reality is, they're poisoning the land. They're taking more than what the land can provide. So they have to shove poison back into it. That's not sustainable. When you take petroleum-based fertilizers and shove them into the land, it's because you've taken too much out and the natural cycle can't work. So in the long run, it's not sustainable what we're currently doing. And everyone's going to start to see that. The best lies are the ones based on truths. And there is truths that are being said amongst all the lies, which is the things that we're currently doing are not sustainable. We do need to change, but we need to change in a way that gives people freedom and independence and doesn't lock them into a cage where they're sitting there like a little mouse, sucking on the little water feeder. And that's it. Go run on your treadmill, which is your mouse wheel, go wait till the little dinger thing happens to go have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and little food comes down, an automated thing, little Amazon drone delivery, Uber Eats, you've got your treadmill for your exercise, you got your Uber Eats for that, and then you just have your water coming in and it's all delivered to you and it's all super comfortable while you sit in your cage.
Well, you're building up a Saturday for everybody right now. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, not enough of people think about the waste from animals, but that's a huge one. Like you said, mucking the stalls. I mean, you don't realize how much comes out the back end of an animal until you have one. And where do you put all that? Well,
Yep.
Luckily we have a bunch of holes in different areas. We're trying to get the soil tended up to try to rejuvenate it. So it's great if the layer is this thick. We're going to cover it with another layer of dirt after it gets and let it settle and then put into like layer cake it until we get that soil remediated in different spots. You go out on 5 acres, there's a lot of holes and there's a lot of things. And if we pre-dug some holes for trees that we didn't use. So, I mean, trying to refill in. And also another thing, we've moved to try to use a lot of our own grasses for bedding hay instead of buying straw from markets, because a lot of that straw is covered with chemical. So, if you're going to use the straw and you think, that's awesome, look how much manure is in it. We got the straw, we got the manure. I'm going to just put it around the tomato plants. I'm going to put it on plants. You're going to kill. There's so much pesticide in that stuff, or I should say herbicide, excuse me. There's so much herbicide in that, so they could get a single species. And a lot of that stuff is like oat straw or it's wheat straw or something like that, glyphosated or grazed to 2 days from Tuesday because they needed to get a single monocrop out of there. And then the waste product from that monocrop is that straw that you're buying. So the minute it rains and you start to wonder why your plants turn yellow, and again, Jeff, we're gonna be growing indoors because we can alleviate a lot of those things. Now, can you put out an entire wheat field in your house?
No,
not really. We're trying to put out buckwheat because it's good fodder, and there's some grain on that they can eat. Also, we're trying just a couple different things. It's, again, I need old timers to tell me, is buckwheat a viable crop for sheep to produce fodder and protein source? And at the end, like, what do we do with 3 tons of hulled buckwheat? I mean, do we need to hull it so the animals can eat it, or can they eat the hulled buckwheat? You know, these are the kind of questions we have this summer is, all right, now we got 3 tons of buckwheat. Who cleans that? Before, in the old days, they had machinery where old timers would go from one farm to another and dehusk or dehull and then move on. And then they would take part of that as their payment. They wouldn't even take cash. They would just take part of the grain. But those mobile dehullers and dehuskers, they haven't done that in probably 20 years out here. So that's an old lost art form as well. That's value for value. If you can dehusk or dehull something for somebody, they'll trade you off the grain. So, and then if you figure you can use the grain or sell it on, then that's a barterable versus having to use cash these days. So I'm trying to think like the old timers did. And I know you two, or are you doing the same thing out there, trying to think like, how do we get outside the cash system and do what some of these old timers did in terms of value for what you put your energy into and what value they can offer you to get that, you know, level up that energy that you put in and extract it out from that same plant species, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. We do think about that all the time, kind of calling it the second economy, right? Is how do you step outside of a system that's literally trying to kill you, you know, that anti-human system? And how do you deal in both worlds? Because it's not like taxes go away, you know, death and taxes, they're always there. So how are we going to take care of those things? What we see at Eden and what I see personally, you know, I'm co-founder of Eden, is it's all about community. Like, no matter how much I want to be the lone wolf, like we said earlier, you have to have community. You know, you can't grow all the food you need. I mean, you can grow the calories that you need. There's no doubt about that. People can do that. With 4 of our towers, you could grow 2,000 calories. The problem is, you know, that's not a diversified set of food. You know, food to us is a much more diverse experience. You know, it's like, you know, I want to make a meal that tastes good, so I'm gonna have some chicken, I'm gonna have some lettuce, I'm gonna put some carrots on it, some onions, I'm gonna have some pepper and salt and garlic and all these other things. That's what we call food. It's not just, you know, eating a power bar that has 2,000 calories in it and, you know, blocks you up for a week. You know, you want to have it be enjoyable. You know, there's survival, and then there's, you know, we actually want to live and not just be eating power bars our whole life, or MREs. You know, I was in the military. You can have MREs. Some of them are pretty good, but you ain't having them for long because you're one, there's a ton of calories, and two, you need a little extra, you know, help kind of clear you out. And then eventually you're tired of beef stroganoff mixed with tuna. You know, it's just, you know, you can only get so many flavors. That's why I throw Tabasco in there, is they got to do something different. But no, we need community. We need each other. That's what the old timers really had figured out, is the families, the big communities, the getting together, the granges. You know, most people don't even know what a grange is. A meeting hall, town hall, you know, town center, getting together and sharing a community. That's the way we need to do it. So people in the 21st century, our community, it's not just limited to our immediate neighbors, but it's also because of social media, because of YouTube. You know, we have community across the planet now where we can share ideas and concepts. And, you know, what you're doing with Adapt 2030, you've been helping bring community together to help waking people up, give them news that, you know, they can't go get on their own. So thank you to you as well. And yeah, you know, get everybody growing gardens as much as you can. And if you don't have the ability, or you don't have the time, or if you don't want to go through the learning curve, you don't want to deal with all the problems that we're talking about, which you can overcome, but they are hard. You know, check out our tower. That's why David's checking it out, you know, see how it works. And you can do a lot. And one of the things I'll say, I get people, you know, hey, can I build one of these myself? And the answer is, of course. I mean, if you're really dedicated, where there's a will, there's a way, you can build stuff. But one of the things that we've done, if you go watch my channel, The Real Martian, you'll see how I started off, and like, here, this is what I'm going to build. And, you know, I had a lot of people helping me on that channel. You know, I think there's nowhere near the subscribers that you have, but like 30,000 people on there, you know, trying to help me, you know, give me feedback and tell me how to make the system better. And that took like 3 years of working a normal job, coming home and working till midnight most of the time, Monday through Friday, and, you know, building stuff, testing it, shopping for it. Oh my goodness, shopping sucks, man. It's like you think it's fun, it's not. You're like, I just need this widget. How do I find this widget? That's too expensive a widget. There's got to be another widget that costs less. Then you get that widget, it comes, it sucks. So you got to buy another widget. Your pile of crap that what you talk about. That here's all the things that failed. Like this is a money pit over here, and then here's the stuff that works, and then the time that goes into putting it all together. Man, yeah, if you're a DIYer and you're doing it for a hobby and it's fun, of course, go knock your socks off. But if you're serious about food, check out our towers, because all that learning, everything there, we're just doing some math this morning. Like, it's like 40 hours of your time. What is that worth? Because that's basically what it would cost for a tower. If you, depending on how much you're worth, most people are worth way more than minimum wage, I think they would say. But all that learning that we did, and we're not alone. There's other companies out there. And I'll just say this, what we believe at Eden is everybody needs to be growing food. We have developed essentially a Swiss Army knife of indoor growing. So you have more control over everything. But honestly, I don't care. Just go grow food, man. Just grow food. Here's the message: grow food. Figure out how you are going to grow food. If it's a potter on your apartment on the 50th floor of downtown New York, do it and get your neighbors to do it. Grow a tomato bush, grow a pepper bush, grow a lettuce. It doesn't matter. Grow something and share in community. And if you want to get really serious about it and you're in those same locations, contact us at Eden and we're going to help you start growing, because everybody needs to do it. So with that, turn it back over to you. I'm really grateful for having the opportunity to even just come and talk with you, David. It's always a pleasure being able to talk to you and, watching your channel and just keeping up to date with what you're doing. Again, very grateful for what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to how the tower is going, and getting your feedback. As Eden, we're not perfect. We're humans. If you've ever done a startup, then you know what I'm talking about. Is you're balancing so many different realities, and you got to get a product out to customers, and sometimes you get the product out there and it still needs some, well, actually every product always needs more work. That's why we're on like iPhone 12, right? So we're going to be doing the same thing. So I look forward to your feedback, and plus anybody on your channel who's coming over, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming over. Thanks for your purchase in advance. But we'll always be taking your feedback and making a better product. So thanks, Dave, for inviting me here today.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. And please remember, this interview will also be posted on the new channel, Return to Abundance. That's all about growing systems indoor, how to return our food growing sovereignty back into our own hands using tech. The way that we're going to have to move through this is we're going to be part old school and part new school. It's going to be a blend hybrid somewhere in the middle. And that's what the new channel is about, is bringing persons like Jeff here on. So we can view what's going on while the grow is in process and report on that, but then also have interviews with interesting people in these spaces that are going to share the ideas of how we can bring some of our food growing sovereignty back literally to us. And it could be indoor or certain types of greenhouses and high tunnels that are more high tech than others. You did that as well. So, there's many ways, shapes, forms, and fashions, but Eden Grow Systems, I'll leave that link in the description box below so you can go check out the towers. But again, if you come over to the channel, once we get 4,000 people, we can do live streams on that. So I'll post this one up here. It'll be on the Adapt 2030 channel, as well as the Return to Abundance channel. And Jeff, thanks for your time. And everybody else, I do hope you got something out of the video. Leave your comments in the description box below, in the comments, so we can respond to you. Things that we find, subjects that you liked, and then we can come out for round 2. And then Jeff and I, we can copy those and have them on a sheet, and then we can read them off one by one and try to articulate that and read some answers of you who left comments for us below. And I think that'd be a really good video as well, to read the reader comments and then have us respond to that. It'd be a fun one. People say all kind of fun and interesting ideas. So until that time, bye for now.